Grace and peace. Welcome to Judah's Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative YouTube channel. I am your host, Apostle Cheryl. Today's topic is breakup recovery, what to expect. Breakup recovery, what to expect. We're going to talk about what reasonable expectations are pertaining to how we navigate life after the breakup of a relationship, especially if it's an abusive one. But before we get started, I want you to take a few seconds, check down here below the video, make sure to subscribe if you've not done so already, and then click that bell for notifications and you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. We upload a new video every Sunday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, you ready? Let's get started. So the topic is breakup recovery, what to expect. Now, one of the things that was mandated study for me as I pursued my graduate work in counseling and psychology was the 5 stages of grief as established by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And at that time, it was considered pretty much cutting edge in terms of helping us to understand how we tend to experience the grieving process as it pertains to death. But what we've learned over the years is that this pertains to any loss that we may experience in life. It could be a death. It could be the loss of a relationship. It could be loss of employment or a status in society. It could be a financial loss. And so we're going to look at it in terms of a breakup in a relationship. Now, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross designated 5 stages. Some have studied it further and added additional stages, but for the sake of this discussion, we're going to keep it to 5. And so the 5 stages that were identified when we're going through a grieving process are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So again, those 5 stages are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. One of the things that you've heard me say, if you followed me over the years, in my ministry line of Judah Global Impact Ministries, or even with Judah's Roar, since we've established it, is that the expectations that we have of ourselves and others must be reasonable if we're going to navigate life successfully. Our expectations must be reasonable. That means we need to understand what is the norm. What is the norm when we're navigating certain obstacles and challenges in life? Now, what does denial look like in a domestic violence relationship? Well, denial is very pervasive. The abuser is denying any responsibility for his or her actions. The victim may be denying that what they're experiencing is in fact abuse. Family members and support system may deny that it's abusive or may decide that it's acceptable because it's in retaliation or in response to some other behavior that they generally feel is unacceptable. But denial, basically, when we're talking about a domestic violence relationship, in terms of how it is utilized by the victim, how it impacts the victim, is that the victim may often minimize or rationalize, right, that they are experiencing abuse. And this prolongs the relationship and it hampers their ability to recognize that it's time to go, that it's time to exit, that the relationship is unhealthy, that it is toxic, and that it may even be life-threatening. So that's denial. Then anger. Anger. A victim may be angry with God, with their higher power, if they're a person of faith, for A, allowing them to cross paths with this abusive person in the first place, B, permitting the relationship to continue to the place where it became abusive, C, they may be angry with loved ones and those who support them if those people are not able to view the relationship the way that they do. This could be that the support system is saying that this is an abusive relationship, and the victim may become angry at it being identified as such, which means that they are still steeped in denial, okay? Or the anger could be that they don't view it the way that you do, that you as a victim feel that it's abusive, and they're saying, no, it's not, it's your fault. You could do this better, you could do that better. If you started doing this or stopped doing that, then these behaviors would stop. So anger absolutely plays a role. Now, bargaining. In bargaining, one of the things that I've learned is this in terms of bargaining in an abusive relationship. If you, as the victim, can think of anything at all, anything that the abuser can say to you that will cause you to reinvest, to re engage, then you are indeed still very much stuck. You know that you are ready to go when there's nothing more that can be said. There's nothing that anyone can say. There's no scripture that someone can throw at you. There's no cliche that they can quote. There's no bumper sticker that they can offer you that's going to cause you to believe that you deserve to be treated the way that you've been treated. Okay. And so bargaining, when it is in operation, seeks reasons and excuses to stay. So now we're talking about post-relationship navigation, right? How to navigate after a breakup and what to expect. And so we've talked about denial and anger and bargaining and their roles in the relationship as it stands, right? You also want to look at depression. So depression can come in as we begin to accept that the relationship was a bad idea, that it's been abusive, that it's cost us time out of our life that we're not going to get back, that we have negatively impacted, our children or other loved ones or support system. We've stressed them out. We've got them worried and concerned about our safety on a day-to-day basis. And so you can find yourself in a very dark place. And so hopelessness can set in, and negative coping skills may be engaged in order to try to navigate this particular phase of depression. Abuse of prescription drugs, alcohol abuse, overeating, not eating enough, sleeping too much, not sleeping enough. And so these are all coping skills. Risky behaviors, driving super, super fast, taking chances, living on the edge, taking a walk on the wild side, however you want to define it, okay? But depression can display itself in many, 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 many ways. And then there's acceptance. There's acceptance. So this is stage number 5. Over time, you come to a place where you accept what wasn't. And you don't have to deny what you desired. That's not what acceptance means. Acceptance doesn't mean that you deny that you ever wanted the relationship to work. Acceptance means that you can accept and embrace the fact that you had this hope that it was not fulfilled, but that life does go on and that you do, in fact, have value. So when we're talking about post-relationship, when we're talking about relationship recovery, breakup recovery, and what we can expect to experience on some level these 5 stages of grief that we've just outlined: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Now, it's important to note that we may not experience these phases at the end of a relationship, even if it's a toxic relationship, in any particular order. It's also possible that we move from denial, right? We go from denial, we go to anger, okay? Then we go to bargaining. Then we may go back to anger. Something may happen in our day-to-day life that triggers anger all over again. This does not mean that you're not moving through the process. It means that it's different for each one of us. That we will experience these different things We may not experience them number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the end. We may go 1, 2, 3, back to 2, back to 1, the I can't believe this is happening stage. There's got to be another explanation for this. Back to bargaining. There must be something that I can do to salvage this. Okay. Then depression. Then acceptance. And then you can get down the road, days, weeks, months, even years, and something can happen that triggers a trip down memory lane regarding these stages of grief. And so it's possible to get down the road several years and have some life event occur that then kicks you all the way back to anger, or kicks you back to denial, or kicks you back to bargaining. All right. And so it's because this is not unusual. And when you couple it with trauma bonding, it's so difficult for victims to leave and to stay gone because you have all these things at play. So, what have we been talking about? We've been talking about breakup recovery. The first thing that we have to do is to understand what reasonable expectations are and not expect any more of ourselves than is reasonable. Okay, so it's reasonable that you will experience denial. It is reasonable to experience anger. It's reasonable to seek solutions, bargaining, even under intense circumstances. It is reasonable to slip into depression at some point. What's important is that you don't stay there. And it's totally reasonable to find a place of acceptance. And then, because life is life, right? Life is life, and we all face challenges. It's very reasonable that something may happen in your life at a later point in time that can trigger a revisit to one of these previous stages. It does not mean that you've not processed it. It means that you are continuing to grow and develop as a person. So, what is it? What are you saying, Apostle? What is it that you want us to know? That when we look at the 5 stages of grief, they apply to our lives, even concerning relationship, not simply death, but the loss of a relationship, the loss of status in society, the loss of our employment, financial ruin. These things can all trigger a response in us that will carry us through these 5 stages. Remember that they are not in concrete. Remember that you do not necessarily experience them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the end. It's important that our expectations are reasonable, beloved, are reasonable, that we extend grace to ourselves to navigate these challenges, that we understand where we are, okay, and that it's a process. And it's a process that takes however long it takes. My process may take me weeks or months. Your process may take you years. My process may take years, and your process may take months. It just depends. What does it depend on? Well, just like with any other injury, your recovery is highly related to how damaged you were in the first place. How healthy were you in the first place? How healthy were you when you experienced this loss in the first place? If you were healthy, reasonably healthy, then you'll be able to navigate it. It'll be uncomfortable. There'll be some growing pains. You'll be okay. If you were somewhat damaged, which in many cases, when we're talking about domestic violence, there's some damage that predates the abusive relationship. It's what made you vulnerable in the first place to it, right? Some damage on some level. So be patient with yourself and extend yourself some grace, the same grace that you extend to others. You deserve at least as much grace as you have extended to the abusive person in your life. We've been talking about the 5 stages of grief as penned by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross many years ago. We've talked about the fact that it applies to the challenges that we face today. that it's not only limited to death and dying, but that it pertains to a loss that we experience or a trauma that we experience in our life. We've talked about the importance of holding ourselves accountable, uh, but being empathic and gentle with ourselves as well. What are those 5 stages? What are the 5 stages? Do you remember? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, right? And acceptance. Remember that you may not move through them in the order that I've just discussed them, that it's very fluid and it varies somewhat from person to person. But know that at the end of it, you can be stronger and more confident, and that you matter, and that you matter. This is Apostle Cheryl with Judas Roar Domestic Violence Awareness Initiative. Thanks for spending time with us today. You stay safe out there. Blessings to you.